Out there this evening. Listen, I hope I'm getting through because I'm running off a hot spot in a little old shed up here in the hill on the hillside. So just trying to get out a little bit and trying to explain a few things, point out a little bit of history, maybe help us with all these labels and stereotypes and how we refer to each other, and maybe just get back to saying brother or sister or that guy or that girl or something. But and maybe it's something a few of y'all didn't know, and now you'll know. So here we go. Ever wonder why you say white people or black people, or why we're distinguished from each other? Is it really about a color thing, or why things were so rough on black people and not on white people during a period where actually some white people were being treated exactly the same? Why they got different types of names for slaves, like indentured servant and then just field slave or house slave. Um, there's a lot of reasons for this. You got to go all the way back to 1681 when we were still under the rule of the British. They made a law. They saw that over here in America, everything was getting kind of groovy with everybody. You had free black men. They were in the Continental Congress. You can look that up. Landowners, slave owners, black men own white people, own white indentured servants. They were able to keep indentured servants longer because during the 7 years or so that they would have one, if they got pregnant and had a baby, they'd get like 5 more years out of them and the child. So it was actually profitable for them to mix up a little bit. The British wasn't getting no tax money off of it because that's what all colonies are about, is making tax money off the world. Rome did it, Babylon did it, Persia did it, Samaria did it. Everybody, the Vikings did it. Everybody tries to own the world, and they always collapse and fall. But here's one of the reasons why, and why the reasons why today we label each other the same way. They saw this mixing of the people, and especially the Native American, the new black slaves that have been coming over from West Africa, and white women, white British women now, mixing it up pretty good, and they didn't care for it. With the indentured servants, it's one thing, they get more time, like I said, out of that servant. But with their own women and their own culture, their own white people, because the British were white people, they made a law where British women couldn't marry black men or Native American men, and they labeled this the Negro from West Africa, African people, and the Indians from the newly found Americas, and they made it law. That also, while doing that, they defined the slave, and they almost made a stepping stone, like a totem pole for slavery, with the black unpaid field hand being at the bottom of the totem pole, and the indentured servant being one step up, and the working man, like the trash man and all that, the next step up, and a little bit. But it started turning into people that were like them, white people. Now think about this for a minute. If you really wanted to hide who you were, and the kings of old back then were trying to hide, people revolted on them all the time. They had colonies in Australia. The Dutch had a colony, and the British were working with them with a colony down in South Africa. You had the Americas, and that was just a big crazy thing and a big money maker. This is why at the end of this, I'll tell you where to get your reparations from. Her name's the Queen of England, and she's holding all y'all's gold, because that's gold from this time period. But they made the white man feel a little bit more privileged. That's how you hide. If you're white and you want to hide, you go get around white people. If you're black and you want to hide, you go get around black people. I mean, unless you Dave Chappelle and go to Africa, because I don't think Dave Chappelle took to Africa too much. I don't think they took to him or Wesley Snipes. They came back home pretty quick. But you know what I mean? Not joking around. And the more they created around them in this one colony, and then 85 years later, 84 years later, on April 19th, 1775, we revolted against that. But still, the black man was kept black, and white people were kept white. In 1691, one of the continental states, what would be called the Americas, Virginia. The Virginians have been there probably one of the longest, oldest states. They actually used the same concept, except they added a white man or a white woman cannot marry a black man, not an Asian man, just a black man or an Indian, Native American. So you see how they separated it here from the two slaves that they conquered, the Native American Indian and the black man that they brought over, kept them away even from the few free black men that roamed and had no trouble. There was no trouble for certain types of black people, even certain type of rich or business. It's always been about business, y'all. It's always been about who can bring something home for the crown. Now, I want to get back to that. A lot of things happen in our history, and a lot of us believe this, and a lot of us believe that. Well, guess what? What none of us there. But if you go by the writings and you go by if you pay attention to it and you listen to story after story and you catch the little details in the stories as they go along, excuse my runny nose again, you'll come to find out that after the Civil War, we were very weak, and the Bank of England bought us back. I think this is why racism existed. With the newly found 13th Amendment, they were able to make all men slaves that were prisoners, and even some workers. If you really carefully pay attention to the law, uh, that's why unions were so important to some people, because outside of a union, somebody could just work you for whatever, for nothing, if you didn't have anybody backing you up. So, got to pay attention to this part of history. But this is why we say white people and black people. And when black people get upset at white people and they say, man, them white people this and them white people that, white privilege this and white privilege that. In a way, it's true, but we're still slaves. Nobody's ever going to be like the top 1%. They're black folks. I'm just going to tell you that right now. They ain't going to take, even if I shaved and I went to corporate America and I was working right there beside Dick Cheney at Halliburton, they would not look at me as nothing but a slave. I'm a tax slave. That's the best slave in the world. That's a slave that happily gives over half their paycheck. They ain't got to beat you and kill you for the whole check. They just work you to death for half of it and make you feel good about it. And make you feel like you get this little chump change back at the end of the year. So it's all a big game on your mind. But the reason why we, the people, still look at each other as black and white is because of a law made by the British in 1681 that 10 years later in 1691, Virginia and one other state, and I can't remember the name of it right now, it's right next to them, actually said, yes, we're gonna go along with that too. We're gonna separate black people and white people. And you can't get married. You couldn't that's when black folks couldn't do anything in America that a white person could do, and a white person could only do so much that only the rich could do, and the rich could only do so much as what their corporate masters in DC could do. So we got to really look and pay attention to the history and why we think the ways we do about each other. Some of them are taught in the home because of this ignorance, because we're not realizing that British rule is part of the New World Order, y'all. Why you think them bastards sit around, those families get to sit around like they do after losing all these wars and having to be helped out by every country in the world when the Germans come to get them? Huh? They're still there because they are New World Order. These people still have a giant interest in this country. They bought us back in 1871 when we were broke. Look up the Organic Act of the Constitution. Just look up a lot of your history to find out why you're doing what you're doing today. You get it? We're being played by white people. You damn straight. But it's rich white people that maybe don't even live here. You ever get that? Like the Russians might be messing with us on Facebook and putting up memes of this and a story here and a little story there and making it putting on their little entertainment channels and their news channels. And somebody's always trying to get us fussing with each other. You ever, why? I wonder why. That's the question we should have. I really shouldn't even be out here talking about why white people are called white people and black people and why we've been defined as different by the color and just made us different kind of slaves and different kind of citizens on top of that, and where these super rich white people could hide. Uh, just to remind you of a few things, like we're only 9% of the population, white people, and that's global. And in America, we're only 5% of the global population. Yeah, we're supposedly 75 to 77% white, but and it's that kind of white society. But they're also the biggest slaves, and that's a reality. They do pay the most money in taxes. They're the ones that they're keeping in the box, not the black man. So I think if the black man was free in his mind, if the black sisters were able to run around like they used to and educate their own children, I think America would be a lot different place. I think if we were taught the different ways of life and the different parts of life and cultures of life and the spirituality in life by everybody that's been brought to this country, no matter how the hell we got here. But now we can talk about who we are and what we feel and where we need to go from here. Man, think of what we could be, but they can't have that. So they labeled us, y'all. So there's your history on where your damn label come from. And you can feel free to use it. I use it. You know why I say black folks and white folks? Because that's how you got to define things, because that's the common language of the day. The common language back then, they didn't like it because everybody was either free man or you were a slave. There was no color attached to it. In 1681 is when they first attached color to slavery. And no doubt the black man got the rough end of the deal on that one. That was for sure, because from that time on, for sure, there was a large slave trade, and there was a lot of inhumanity. There's a lot going on today. Not to belittle nothing, and you know better than that coming from me. But we can't do much about what happened back there in 1681. But we can see what people did to us, what rich people did to play us, we the people, playing us like chumps against each other, against our own brother, against the only thing we got, our own mothers, our own fathers, our own neighbors, our own tribes that have always been around us, and we know are there. We're connected to each other no matter what. Nobody can stop that. But these stupid laws are racism. Those laws were made to create racism. When you made a black and a white, when you made men different, even of value in the color of their skin, or even what part of a country they came from, like the Irish and stuff like that. Wow, wow. I mean, that's how you fuel wars. That's how you build armies. That's what those rich British bastards did. And I'm not getting on all the folks out there in England. Take it like you want to. It's your history too, man. Maybe you can go over there and slap that queen around a little bit and let her know we know about her New World Order ass. And man, that's a lot of gold. Would feed a lot of poor people. And they owe some folks over here. I believe they owe them about 40 acres and a mule, so they ought to be paying up, cuz if you didn't know, in 1871, the Crown also bought up that creed that was made by the federal government. They bought it when they bought out the federal government. So the British truly and legally are the ones that owe you reparations, if you want to know the truth. If you're owed anything, you think you're owed anything from the Civil War, it goes back to the British, because they bought back the federal government in 1871 after the Civil War. It's their baby. And they bought that one particular thing. They paid for every bit of that, and you got it, it's yours. So I mean, you got to look into that. I mean, you just got to look into it if that means that much to you. My point is, you're given labels by rich people. We're being played by daddy warbucks, y'all. You see what I'm saying? We're laughed at. We're slaves. We're all slaves. But you know what else we are? We're all brothers and sisters, and we can talk like this and tell each other what the hell's going on, and not fall for the game, not fall for their lies, and not fall for their fear. Because they fear us united and standing against them. We're the only reason why they're super rich. We're the only reason why they wear crowns. We're the only reason why people bow down in front of them. They don't make you bow down in front of a king. You bow down in front of them. Then nobody makes you bow down in front of a queen, or act all goofy when you see a president, or act all scared when you see a cop. You do that. You do that because your mind's conditioned to do that. Think about that. But know where you got your labels from, okay? That's for sure. And actually, I hope beyond hopes that this made sense to y'all. I'm doing this out of love and out of understanding, so we know the true enemy. Because whether you like it or not, man, times or they're not nowhere near as hard as they're going to be. You're going to need your brother. You're going to need your sister. We're going to need our tribes. Our tribes are going to need to unite. We're going to have to just protect whole communities pretty soon. We can't do that fighting each other. We can't do that looking at each other and saying, hey, I'm gonna get the white boy to help me with this, and hey, I'm gonna get the black guy to help me with that. It don't work that way. We got to remember where the damn label came from and say, hey, I need that brother that knows about this, and I need that brother that knows about that. And he might be a redneck, and he might be a city boy gangster, but everybody's got their skill, and everybody's got their trade, and everybody's got their tricks, and when united, that's unbeatable, and they know it. They know it, y'all. So that's why they keep us apart, and that's why I'm going to try to keep us together, because I love y'all. I think we're better off together than we ever were apart, and y'all know that too. So think about that. Peace. I love you. Look at your history. Be paying attention, and don't live in fear. That fear is the thing. You know it. And hey, knowledge up. Wisdom is knowledge is and experience is wisdom, and wisdom is power. Knowledge is the power that gets you there. So think about that. Peace.